I'm a bit of a loner, and while that sounds depressing, it's actually not. I'm married and I have people in my life that I sometimes spend time with, but most of the time I just prefer being on my own. When I go out for a walk, I prefer to walk alone with my own thoughts to keep me company. Some people would call me an introvert, which makes sense. An introvert is someone who needs solitude to recharge, but I can also be very social when I want to be. You see, I'm not afraid of people, it's just that I find most people to be very boring. And I know that sounds harsh, but I'm just being honest here. And I'm not even sure that I believe in the whole concept of introverts and extroverts. I think that most people are somewhere in between. I don't even consider myself to be 100% introvert. I have two people in my life that I consider to be close friends, and that's not including my wife. I value friendship, but not as much as my solitude. Maybe that sounds a bit narcissistic, but that's the way I feel. Now, it's kind of interesting, but I wasn't actually always like this. There was a time when I was a bit more social, but back then I was very unsure of myself and I needed validation for everything that I did. Today, life is very different for me. I live in my head most of the time, which is a very weird place, but you know, it's my place and I absolutely love it. When we lived through the whole pandemic, it wasn't really a big change in my life, and I actually loved that I was forced to work from home. And in this video, I wanted to share some thoughts about people like me. You see, there are many misunderstandings about loners and introverts, and I wanted to set the record straight. I think that society has the wrong idea about people. Because most people are social, it's been widely accepted that being social is normal, and being alone is somehow unnatural or can even be bad for you. Now, I'm sure it is for extroverts, but for introverts, it's really not. Okay, can we just take a moment here? Like, why is it so hard for most people to spend time by themselves? What's going on in people's brains that is so horrible that they can't spend a day or even just a few hours being alone? I honestly don't get it. Now, extroverts, they don't understand the need to be alone. They can't really grasp the benefit of solitude or the whole point of it, which is totally fine because as a loner, I can't really understand the need for coffee house banter. Now, I'm no expert and I don't know or care what social science says, but I do know this. Being a loner is not a bad thing. There is a big difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Truth be told, I only feel lonely when I'm with large groups of people. I sort of feel stressed out and often get exhausted from the noise and the difficulty to focus. Sometimes people accuse me of being alone because I have a fear of being abandoned, which is not true. It's more that I accept the reality of life. You know, sometimes people leave us. They either die or they move on, and I don't count on my wife to always be there for me. Things change, and good or bad, that's the only true constant in life. And I think a lot of people think that I'm boring, but the truth is I'm mostly never bored. If I am, it's only because I'm in a bad mood or something bad happened. It has nothing to do with people being in my life or not. And you know, in prison movies, when someone did something bad, they have to go to solitary confinement and they have to be alone in a room for days, and it's like a punishment, you see. It's like if they don't behave, they are forced to solitude. While most people find that type of punishment horrible, I can actually sometimes fantasize about how I would love to spend days in complete solitude. The most boring thing I know is when you are in the office and people talk trash. You know, they talk about the weather or sports or politics, and they don't even get very deep in these conversations. There's always just, oh, it's such lovely weather, but I heard it's gonna rain tomorrow. And I would rather hear something interesting, like, did you know that Egypt and Greenland were once green? You know, I like deep conversations where you can question the status quo, but most people don't like that. For most people, life just has to make sense, or at least have the appearance of it making sense. And to me, life doesn't really make much sense. All I see in the world are these social constructs that society has created. Like the idea of signing a document, like if that means something, like you signed it, you're bonded by your word. It's not exactly true. Like, maybe I meant it at the time, but I no longer do. I don't mind looking behind the curtains, you know, exploring life and the true fabric of it. And maybe it's because I used to do experiments with hallucinogens when I was younger, or maybe it's because I once survived a terrible depression, but I can't just sit here and pretend that everything makes sense. So I prefer being on my own, making YouTube videos and focus on my personal hobbies. Where most people think I don't like being with people, it's just not true. I just find most people to be very boring. Some people, however, I do find to be extremely interesting, and I would love to have a conversation with them because they just fascinate me. But most people are just so bland, they don't really offer any interesting thoughts or ideas. Now, I'm sure that most people have interesting thoughts, but they don't really share it. They would rather talk about the weather and sports and politics, and I just find that to be just boring. Sometimes people call me and just start rambling about their life and problems. It's like they need some kind of social validation from me. And I think that validation and approval is something that we all seek, but for very different things. And I think that for me, I like to share thoughts about, life philosophy, and I love reading comments and thoughts on YouTube to know what people think. If it was more socially acceptable to talk about these sort of things, I suppose I would be a bit more social. Most people don't get this part, but being able to be alone in a room and feeling great is actually a superpower. It means that you are capable of achieving happiness just by yourself. You don't need people and you don't need their approval. You live in your head where things make sense. Now, I don't know what it's like to be an extrovert. Maybe their heads are just chaos and they can't stand being in their heads for 5 minutes. And maybe that's why they have to be active in their social lives instead. Now, there are some introverts that can spend their entire lives without people. Personally, I think that a life is best when it's shared with a partner. When you live for someone other than yourself, it just feels like life makes more sense. Or at least it does so for me. But I understand and respect people who prefer to go through life by themselves. So I'm married, and my wife, she's also a bit of a loner like me, and that's how we get along and have done so for the last 10 years. Sometimes when we're driving somewhere, we can actually spend entire hours not talking. We don't feel the need to fill the silence with cheap conversations. We are not only okay with solitude, we actually enjoy it. We do talk, but when we do, it's about things that we find interesting, and that's why I love her. She's someone I can always talk to. Okay, and I just wanted to end this video with a couple final words. I have a very clear understanding of my needs, what works for me and what doesn't. I don't want to waste time on, after work events with coworkers because they are the most boring people on the planet. But I make it a priority to say no to social gatherings that I don't want to be a part of. I never fear that I'm missing out because it's always the same coffee house crap. Now, I do actually enjoy spending Christmas with my family, but only for a few hours and then they have to go. It's nothing personal, it's just that I need time to recharge from all of that noise that happens when a lot of people talk at the same time. I don't have the habit to call friends or family to share life news because I don't seek or need their validation. I'm a loner. I enjoy solitude, and while most people find that to be sad, I don't. People are different. People are unique. What makes life great is different for all of us. But I don't judge other people's needs. I'm fully capable of understanding that most people have their own personal preferences. And I wish the world had a better appreciation and understanding of people who live in solitude by choice. Just like people wish I wasn't so lonely, I wish they had what I have, the ability to experience joy even in complete solitude. Thank you for listening. Bye.